The idea of token inflation is bad, exists in DeFi as long as I remember, because it's usually, tied to shit farms where they release their tokens for people to come in, provide liquidity, and then as a reward, they do get these emissions. And these emissions are not productive assets. They're nothing. They're just there and they are given away for people to be dumped on liquidity pools. So there's nothing behind them. There's no value capture. Aerodrome, however, changes all of this landscape through AERO, even though the idea that AERO is an inflationary asset is true, right? So each epoch, around 10 million, more or less, AERO is being emitted. And because of this, people look at AERO as just a conduit for USDC. So they try to take it through any liquidity pool whatsoever, and then they try to swap it out, and they consider that this is the only play that should happen, and they hope that the price will remain at a certain level for it to be profitable. However, AERO is much more than this. Now, we have discussed Aerodrome overall on this YouTube channel in so many videos. You can check them out. Just go and search for Aerodrome and you'll see everything, all right? But today we're gonna focus mainly on AERO as an asset and why it's potentially worth more as a hold versus just a sell. Now, of course, this is a free market. People will do whatever they want, but here are a few arguments as to why AERO could be a potential hold. Now, first thing you will notice is that if you actually provide liquidity, right, in AERO USDC or in any other pool for that matter. So if I search for AERO, you will see so many of these pop up. The returns are quite interesting. Now, AERO USDC, of course, is the one that, in my personal opinion, is the baseline, the safest one in terms of expected returns over a long period of time. The others, because they don't have as much total value locked, because they fluctuate, because if more people enter, that APR that you see will move up and down really quickly. I wouldn't trust this in terms of, longer time frames. But what would justify holding AERO versus locking via AERO? So why would you do any of these two positions, if any at all, right, instead of selling? Now, the way to think about this is that if you want to keep AERO liquid, it's worth pairing it with another asset. So you pair it with USDC, for example, for that APR. On XtraFi, you can actually leverage that and you can earn more. But the risk here, of course, if you know leverage, you know that if price goes down, that you are prone to higher impermanent loss. But if the price increases, then you are in a better shape than if you just put it, bluntly on Aerodrome. So AERO USDC here improves by 4x if you leverage it, more or less, than the 62%, 63% that I just showed you. Or if you want to simply have AERO and be exposed to the price appreciation or depreciation, you can also lend it, right? So lending AERO on XtraFi is an option that you can have. If you scroll down, you will see that it's around 52%. Now, granted, it gives a bit less than USDC AERO, but the upside is that if AERO jumps, you'll get more impermanent gain, but the flip side is that if AERO depreciates, you'll get more impermanent loss versus USDC AERO, where USDC will absorb some of that loss. That's the second option. The third option, or the fourth in that case, is you can lend it on other adjacent platforms. So Silo is an example where you can lend your AERO to borrow ETH or USDC. If you don't know what Silo is, I have a video in the description below, you can check it out. Or MorphoBlue. MorphoBlue has captured I think right now across all of its chains is somewhere around 4.5 billion overall in total value locked, and that's insane. So you can here, for example, put in your AERO to work, you can borrow USDC against it, but of course the LTV is low because AERO is highly volatile overall, so it moves up or down really quickly. And those are options that you can partake if you want to take advantage of that asset. Remember, AERO by itself is a conduit to more yield in the future because it's a productive asset. Now, if you do want to lock in AERO for VAERO, you can do so and you will get an idea of the expected return based on incentives and volume. volume is spiking up, incentives are also spiking up. So you can do that through the AERO maxi, which is giving approximately 50 to 60% APR. Remember, as a rule of thumb, an asset should, in theory, give you a return of something that you would estimate across so many platforms. So if you compare AERO USDC, lending on XtraFi, leveraging, lending on Silo, or for example, putting it in VAERO, you will see that overall the return is more or less the same. Now, in a lending matter, if you want to borrow against it, of course, you have to take into account the yield that you will produce from that borrow asset, plus the lending aspect of AERO, and then you will have the return, which I can tell you from experience that it will fall in line with that expected 50 to 60%. Now, locking VAERO will give you also the benefit of earning exponentially as the protocol scales, plus you won't basically stop at earning back what you locked. Meaning, if I lock in 1,000 VAERO, for example, today, for 1,000-ish bucks, I will potentially get my ROI, let's say, a year and a half from now, and then I'm still earning on that VAERO. And stay on the lookout for potential borrowing against VAERO. If that were to happen, I would say that simply lending AERO will no longer be, a thing, because people will just lock it up and lend against it. But I wouldn't, just fish in a barrel here. I wouldn't really know what will be the full scope of all the mechanics in place. I wouldn't know if you would still be, still be able to earn, incentives basically from that NFT if you're using it to borrow against it. I'm not entirely sure. That remains to be seen. But stay on a lookout for this. And if that were to happen, it would be a game changer. You borrow against your NFT, you still have the value in it, and then you can, earn more yield in parallel. All of these things will still make sense and will keep on making sense as long as Base as a chain keeps on growing, as long as Aerodrome keeps on accumulating TVL, which is at an all-time high, by the way. They crossed 1 billion. And as long as volume stays prolific, if you scroll down, you will see that volume is on the uptrend overall. Of course, you're not going to take individual epochs into account. You want to look at the overall curve here, and you will see that it is on an uptrend. So as long as these metrics perform well, AERO as a productive asset will still be performing as it should. So up and to the right over time. They did make a comparison on X, by the way, between AERO as an asset that is inflationary, right? Because it's being produced every epoch, and VC tokens that are worthless and they're just being, popped out as unlocks, happen throughout the years. So the idea is that if you make such comparison, you will see that AERO is much more valuable than all of these worthless VC tokens that you will dump eventually. Scour for airdrops, take them, dump them. VCs invest, valuation goes up or starts high, dump your tokens or dump your staking rewards, and then you'll still make a lot of money. So I don't think people should, fixate on the idea that that asset, is being produced more over time, but more so on the idea if it captures value and if indeed it has value to begin with. And I think that's more important. Now, overall, in my opinion, the future is bright for Aerodrome, and do not neglect Velodrome. That's the OG. The same team, but they start on Optimism. So I do have videos on Velodrome. I will make an update soon, and hopefully keep you guys updated if things, happen overall in terms of up or down, in terms of metrics, price, etc. Stay sharp in the market, and if you haven't checked our project out, links will be below. We are, propelling strategies across Aerodrome and Velodrome mainly, and the exposure is quite nice. The return is interesting, but I will leave links below. This isn't a video about the project, but if you're interested, check them out. With that, see you in the next one. Have a good one.